Welcome to Logistics Business Conversations, where we talk with key spokespeople in the logistics industry about topical issues. Hosted by Peter Macleod, editor of Logistics Business magazine.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. And welcome to the latest edition of Logistics Business Conversations podcast, brought to you today by TGW. My name is Peter Macleod. I'm the editor of Logistics Business magazine, and as always, it's my great pleasure to host this conversation. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look at the role intralogistics automation is playing in helping businesses transition to Industry 4.0. Now, that term, Industry 4.0, otherwise known as the Fourth Industrial Revolution, describes the rapid digitalization of industry that's been taking place in the early decades of this century. Part of this phase of industrial change is the joining of technologies such as artificial intelligence and advanced robotics that are now blurring the lines between the physical and digital worlds as we previously knew them. Now, joining me to talk about how the world of logistics and warehousing is playing its part in this exciting transformation is David Hibbett, the CEO of TGW Northern Europe. Welcome to the pod, David.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very much looking forward to the discussion. So let's see what we discuss. Yeah.
Well, likewise. So before we get stuck into the meat and bones of this episode, David, I just wonder if you can briefly tell us a little bit about TGW and the role you play and why you're qualified to talk to me today on Logistics Business Conversations.
Very difficult question, but I'll try my best. TGW, I joined TGW 8 years ago now, 8 years ago, about 8 days ago. So I started on the April Fool's Day, which maybe is not the smartest day to start. But in that time, I was there heading up sales for Northern Europe. And I'm now, for the last 5 years, the CEO, as you said, of Northern Europe. And TGW operates as a global company. So we operate in 5 regional areas. And also part of my role is overseeing the commercial aspect of TGW. So it's all the go-to-market strategies and how we actually look to grow along with our customer base across the world. So I do that as well for my hobby. For my background, I started in the industry by sheer accident, as I think most people do. I'm sure I wanted to be an astronaut or a train driver. But as it happened, I was at university and I was doing economics and statistics, and I was working part-time in an office that had a distribution connection with a German automation company. And at the time, WMS data had started to be produced and they needed some analysis. And literally, I was sat in the office and they said, can anybody do statistics? So I started in statistics and started understanding the flow and the material flow and how all the movement of goods were happening in warehouses. And that was now some 30 years ago. So during that time, I've also done project management. I've worked in development projects and I've worked in customer projects from automation for automotive to food production to grocery and fashion and all different sorts of areas. So I've always found it a very interesting industry and been lucky enough to do different aspects, as I said, from design, from solution concepting, research and development and project execution. My qualifications, I don't know, but I'll certainly try and answer your questions today. Yeah.
Great. Well, 30 years is, we've seen a lot of change from a warehouse back then to a warehouse today. The late 1990s, we were seeing automation, but nothing like the sophistication that we're seeing today. So, during that period, you've seen businesses transforming or attempting to transform into a more digital environment. So how has automation played a part in that transformation?
I think it is interesting. So when you go across, I can reference across decades. I think certainly there's always been a demand for companies looking to automate. And in the automation journey, I think the desire is usually the same. I think companies are looking for that efficiency drive and they're looking to tackle some essential problems that they've always had. So I think when the e-com growth came about, that certainly drove a new demand problem of service levels. And the service level drive really is what's caused the big growth in automation need across the world, really. And then, of course, you've got global demographics has changed in 30 years. The working populations of the first world countries, let's say, are effectively shrinking. And it's a more competitive marketplace we've enjoyed relatively low unemployment across most of these developed nations in the last 10, 15 years. And so those trends have all gone in to drive the need and the desire for automation. But even if you went back before my time, I think even conceptually in the 50s, 60s, 70s, the idea of automating something to drive efficiency and that need to have lower cost of operating, it has always been there and will always be there as a driving force. Although we'll talk, I'm sure, more about the speed of development and how fast change and new concepts and new technologies are entering the space we're all working in, that's changed. But the initial drive, just to drive efficiency, I think is an essential thing that's a long-standing need, and it won't go away.
So that sort of pace of development has been, can we say, accelerated by challenges that we're facing today, and always seems to be top of the list: labour shortages, workforce issues, and retaining staff. So automation plays a part in helping your customers to overcome those sorts of challenges. What sort of areas can you sort of step in and say, right, here's where we can help you?
I think the trend for labour shortage is well recognised. I think the other side of that, by the way, is I think the speed of development's been driven by a lot of the development in processing power. So the whole Moore's Law thing that everybody used to understand, I think it was, what was Moore's Law, 18 months to 24 months, doubling the performance capacity of computers. I mean, generally, there was research done, actually, I think between 2012 and 2023, and this was across language-based AI, but that's now 8 months. So the other side of the demand is the systems to support it, and the rate of change that the systems are able to drive is now, let's say, it's doubled what it was under Moore's Law. And I think that you'll see play out in the market. So you see that what we're delivering and other companies are delivering, the market's bringing new developments at a much faster rate than they did 10 years ago. And that's a challenge. I think that's a challenge for the customers, because they're having to select between more concepts and more ideas than they had. Everybody's got the new toy that comes out every few months now. And they've got to sift through all that and figure out what works for their business. I think where TGW, I think some of the more mature, larger players in the market add value is that we're able to understand what's the problem of each unique business. And usually with TGW's portfolio of customers are great blue chip names, and all those blue chip names, they've all got unique characteristics that make them competitive. So they need some aspect of a unique solution that supports their unique characteristics. I still think that selection of what's the best technology is the essential, that consulting element's the essential starting point of where TGW and other major competitors offer an advantage. And then the other point is you've made is the integration. What's now in the market is they don't really see it because we all sell the idea of a standardized solution, but behind every standardized solution is a very maturing, fast-changing supply chain market. So when you look into the sensor technology or drive technology behind all of our technologies, they're developing at a rate of pace that's really evolving constantly. So that integration of the latest thinking from SiC or Lenser drives also needs to be integrated very well into technologies. And all of that is with a view to support giving the customer the best fit technology they can get for their operation, which ultimately delivers efficiency, being faster and more on time to their customer base than they are currently today. And
I guess that also embraces visibility of product as it's traveling through the warehouse, which is very important. But also an area which I think is becoming more important, is flexibility. So obviously we know about the peaks and troughs of our industry, and I think where you are strong, particularly in fashion, those peaks and troughs are probably a little bit more exaggerated and perhaps less predictable. But when it comes to unpredictability in the supply chain, we've got lots of disruptions that can come along. So is there a way that automation can be both sort of flexible and scalable just to help customers overcome these unpredictabilities?
Yes. I think the answer is yes. TGW are acting in that space now. To be honest, we went towards performance and flexibility. So we could change in SKU profile, we could change in order profile, and that was our flexibility. But I think what you've seen in recent world events, the flexibility of scale and size. So there was the canal crisis we had, 2 years ago. And what we saw there was fashion companies were having to hold simply more stock because the container shippers were delayed. And when they did get there, they needed to unload and hold greater stocks. Then what you're driving then is it's basically how fast can you install stock keeping boxes? How can we get more storage in that's less planned? So we can still do that with traditional technologies such as mini loads that are actually much faster to be delivered than more complex technologies, because that's quite a standardized technology now. And then we are also operating with also in the AMR space, and we have a new technology called Live Pick, which is something that can be scaled. Its restriction is it's more standardized. So standardized height, standardized tote configuration, standardized storage depth. So there's more standardization, but in return you get an economic solution that can be put into the market far faster than more traditional performance technologies can. So it's the necessity of the time. We all need more flexibility, and we can offer that. Of course, we can be flexible with our traditional systems, but emerging technologies are doing a very good job, and our Live Pick is one of those that offers very fast, effective, quick to market, quick to install technologies.
So for the sake of listeners who are not familiar with LivePick, it's a goods-to-person system. Could you just quickly sort of run through some of its capabilities?
Yes, I will try and explain it. So, effectively, we've decentralized the control system to a robot, and the robot we've got two types of robot. We've got a robot that moves goods between a picking station and a transfer station. And then we've got a system that takes it and basically stores it within the racks. So they're decentralized power systems, they're decentralized control systems, and effectively AMRs, for want of a more technical term, so autonomous mobile vehicles that will take them between the picking station, place and deposit space, and then there's a pickup point where the robot takes them and stores them in the racks. So what this does is the rack is standard, it's 12 meters high, it's double deep, and we have a bot that can climb those racks, come back down and deposit. And you can introduce more bots if you want to introduce more throughput. And if you want to introduce more storage, you can simply introduce more storage racks. So it's the ability to flex growth in capacity storage, or you can flex growth in production output by introducing more bots. There are other technologies, let's be honest, AutoStore, came into the market and developed that idea of, can you decouple growth of storage from growth of throughput? And we've entered that space, but we've got we think a better answer in terms of that flexibility of being able to, we dig less, we're more double deep than multiple deep, and we think that's a better answer. It's more of an overall what we call a fulfillment answer. So we're looking at more of the end-to-end, how you pick it, how you dispatch it, how you get good dispatch cube, how you get good picking rates. We've looked at the whole end-to-end chain rather than just looking at the storage chain. But it's a good answer, and there's certainly be more on the market in the next few months about that.
So is LivePick a suitable technology for a business who's taking their first steps in technology in automation, or is it something you think they could introduce later on once they've made those moves? And I guess the question is, businesses listening to this who perhaps haven't started that journey yet, where do they take their first steps?
Yeah, that's a good, and I'm going to give the politically correct answer of saying that's a good question. It could do either. Yeah. So I think if you're making those first steps into automation, I think first of all there's a question of pick the right partner for you. That's just a general piece of advice. So I think you are buying a piece of equipment, but what you actually realize is you're buying a partnership, and the equipment should last 15, 20 plus years. So pick a partner that you're going to have a good relationship with. So it's a bit like picking a marriage. Make sure you pick somebody well, because you're going to be living with them for the next 25 years plus. So I think that's a good piece of advice. As a piece of technology, I think if you're going first time into automation, I think LifePick actually isn't excellent, because what you get is you get a more standardized offering. Now, standardized offering means it's less bespoke, it's less tailored exactly to your needs. But the advantage is you will be partnered with many other users who you'll be able to share that user experience with. So it's the advantage of other people will be using it at the same time. They will be learning at the same time. The multiplier effect of you will have similar stations. You will have the same robots as other installations. So you're able to learn from other installations. You're able to imagine the shared parts pool that you have between other installations that are close by. And I think that stability, that learning curve to get to use it as effectively as possible, the more standardized it is, the quicker you can actually adopt it, learn to use it, and make it efficient for your business. So I think that is actually a great place to start. That's not to say if you've got a more stable business and you know that you've got a stable order pool, you've got a good growth rate, and you can predict it, you can tailor automation, and a good partner will take you on that journey. They will help you ramp up the business. They will help you make effectively how you can make it the most efficient tool for your business. So you can go either route. But as a primary advice, you'd say go for something standardized. You'd be able to learn that on yourself very well. If you're going to go for something that's more tailored, then you need a good partner, and a good partner will be more efficient for you ultimately, a better cost of ownership for you efficiently, but you do need a good partner to go on that journey with you.
So we've covered a fair bit already in the sort of first half of this podcast. We're looking at some of the challenges that businesses are facing within the logistics sector. We've covered off pretty nicely some of the labor challenges, some of the disruptions, the areas around flexibility and efficiency. One area, and this is probably always at the top of the list, is cost. How can you work with your customers to help them to reduce their costs, help them to run a cost-effective business?
I think cost. When we do projects, it's interesting. There's the initial capital cost. There's the capital cost of the equipment. There's the operating costs. So what's their cost of operation? So how many people do they need in it? And then, what's the overall support costs of the technology? Because the disadvantage any technology has is it needs supporting, be it IT support costs, hotline, maintenance, and those sorts of things. So if you break it into the three buckets, I think the business case, no automation project should happen without a business case. So, and they've really matured. I think the users have a better understanding of where their current operation is and where they move towards automation. So that is the business case incorporates the capital cost, which is also difficult for us because the markets is a competitive market and we're all trying to keep prices low for automation. But at the same time, we're all affected by world inflation rates and changing material prices. So, but there's the capital. I think the market offers competitive capital projects. What they then offer is the reduction in your labor growth. So nearly every business we do automation for all have growth cases. Very few are just consolidating and trying to find automation as efficiency on its own. Most of them are looking for efficiency as they grow. And in that efficiency as they grow, what they're looking for is we'll use less labor. And that's pretty well proven across mature automation systems now. The picking rates are consistent. They're well proven. They're well handed over by the automation companies. The packaging solutions have matured very well in the last 15 years to offer big benefits. And then you've got the supply chain savings. So when we're doing food distribution systems, we're building more high density pallets and roll cages that are store friendly. And therefore, they're making savings in the supply chain. They're sending less vehicles. The vehicles, when they're dropping off, are there for a shorter period of time, meaning you need less vehicles, less drivers. And when you get to the store, less non-value added activities replenishing shelves because the stuff is stocked in the right. So there's savings in the warehouse, but the cleverer systems are making savings all the way through the supply chain. And then finally is what I'd call the total cost of ownership. My advice is really look into all the suppliers and don't just look at the capital. Ask them what the maintenance costs are going to be over a 10-year period and make an evaluation of that. Because what that is a test of durability and quality. So the better suppliers will be confident in the durability and the quality of their systems, and they should be able to contract that when you're looking at the overall price of things.
I'm going to add in a couple of other aspects as well and ask you to talk about those too. When it comes to rising costs, concerns are always around the cost of fuel and energy. Well, I think you've covered off fuel by talking about vehicle movements, but energy use within the warehouse, I think, is a important aspect. And secondly, talk about the warehouse and the cost of real estate. So is there anything that you can contribute to your customers' businesses that help them mean that you don't need to have so much warehouse space?
Okay. So I'll take the two separate ones. I think power usage, and it comes under sustainability, and it's certainly, the truth is it's driven by our big blue chip corporate clients have their stock registered, and they have a greater moral and commercial need to understand sustainability. So things we're typically doing now with some of our clients. So we are evaluating the sustainable aspect of, what's the overall carbon effect in the supply chain of building their projects. So we've made investments in certain projects into green steel. So where, you can look at lower carbon production of steel, which is a huge carbon user. And then you can also look into the overall power usage of the systems. And TGW's certainly one of the, we've upgraded our shuttle system to the Shuttle Air now. And what does that mean? Basically, it's lighter uses less power. We also use clever control technologies so that not all the systems accelerate at all the same time. We play with the acceleration curves. When systems aren't in use, they go into effectively a standby mode. And these are all marginal gains you're looking at that's effectively bringing the power usage of the systems down constantly over time. For a company like TGW that invests heavily in development, it's a constant journey of what's next. What's the next element we can do to reduce the power usage on the systems for the customers on a cost base and actually just for the good of society. We all need to use less of our global resources on things that don't need to just waste those things. So the technologies across the board, and I would say the ability to develop these improvements are all coming from better data sources. The technologies, the control systems, the electrical control systems and the software systems provide so much diagnostics now. You first need to understand where you're losing the energy in order to know where to improve it. So the analytics and the understanding of where the problems are so much more informed than we were 10 years ago. So we know where to improve. And then we just put some very clever people trying to solve the problems. In terms of storage density, so of course, real estate is a very real carbon requirement as well. And that costs footprint and it costs real money. So the density of storage systems, everybody needs warehousing now, and warehousing's a premium cost. Certainly when we're looking at greenfield installations, density, both in physical height, systems go so much higher now than they used to. You can do 40 meters. That is about the limit that's economical, because that's cold rolled steel. If you go over that, it's hot rolled steel, and then you're just spending your money on new different types of steel. But you can certainly make the systems very high. In terms of density, you can do multiple depths of storage now that you couldn't do in the past. So that helps. And then there's the bit that everybody kind of forgets. There's the algorithms around how you store. So if you've got similar types of SKU, you can store one behind the other very easily. If you've got multiple SKUs, how do you actually store one behind the other? And then inside the actual boxes, how do you get the maximum amount of goods you actually want to sell inside those boxes, which is to do with what we have consolidation processes and housekeeping processes and put away processes. But there's a lot of know-how inside the control systems now that basically look to make sure, yes, you've got a lot of locations. Every company now does that pretty well. But actually inside those locations, how do you make sure they're as full as possible? I think that the better suppliers can actually tell you how many of your products you're going to store extra inside that warehouse, because they're the only things that really add value. But broadly, that's it. I think the technologies now can go higher, they can go deeper, they can sort through all of this, and you've got better algorithms to store different types of products all behind each other and still get access to them.
David, as we reach the end of this conversation, I'm going to ask you a couple of things around the topic of digitalization, data security, and also around the software and algorithms that you were mentioning just now. So maybe just starting with that latter point, it feels like the battlefield amongst systems integrators and suppliers of intralogistics systems to warehousing, quite a lot of that is being fought on the software and algorithm side. Your systems are tried and tested. The hardware is fabulous and it's contemporary. But actually how that interoperates with, for example, legacy systems is down to the software. So where do you stand on that?
So TGW took a strategic decision some years ago to really operate a single IT control platform. So we have our, for a bit detailed, but you have a material flow system that directs things around the warehouse. You have a control system that's the essential brain of where everything's stored. And then you have a warehouse management system that does the higher business processes. We decided to put all of this into one stack, and we execute them not just under a single brand, but it's a single platform. That means every time we implement a project, we increase our learning. So with that learning is the ability to, every time you add a new industry or a new process, you're able to effectively increase your know-how. And so you're doing it off a very stable base because it's something you've implemented several times before. And you're also able to initiate new understandings from every time you implement it. So it's like a series of experiments. Every time you add an experiment, you learn more. So that's something everybody should probably look for, because what happened in the early 2000s, lots of companies consolidated. So what they actually have, they have a brand behind their software, but it's several different platforms all operating. And you can stitch them together, but they never really have the efficiency and the stability. So I think that became key. Every time there's a project and there's an experiment, all the data systems all come in the same format. And when the data systems come in the same format, you can effectively make data reservoirs. And the data reservoirs is really the concept behind, Industry 4.0, because you install common technology that creates common data pools, and effectively AI needs very good data in order to enact itself. And that's where TGW are just getting stronger and stronger. Very large data pools that we're able to analyze across multiple applications and warehouses. And we're able to pool all of that learning. And therefore, we're able to understand where the errors are, where the opportunities are, and where you can drive efficiency. Whereas if you have multiple platforms, that's always very difficult to do. Yeah.
I often hear some of the largest barriers towards the adoption of Industry 4.0 on a wider scale is sort of almost like an unwillingness to hand over that data, to give away your company secrets in a highly competitive world, for example, fashion logistics or food logistics, where sometimes these businesses are competing in their supply chains. So what can you say to your customers to give them the assurance that, the data is secure then in your hands and it's going to be used for benevolent reasons rather than the opposite?
So I think just generally the topic of IT security. So we bring the data in, and the strength of the data is that if a single company has access to their own data, which we give them, and we do so in a secure way, it helps them. The diagnostic systems are so much more powerful now. But the real advantage is when we're able to give them feedback of not just their own installation, but multiple installations, because there's more experiments. More experiments gives them more certainty about how the system's operating. So that's something we're able to do. Over all of that, what's driven and I think the bigger companies definitely do this. IT security is, if any company deals with the American conglomerates that are on the Fortune 500, the rules in America have driven IT security as a key thing. Is not a can you do it? It is a starting basis. Before we start talking, you have to subscribe to heavily IT secure systems. And we started on that journey 10 years ago. It really accelerated about 6 years ago when the US changed the US stock market, changed the legislation about what happens and who's liable when there's any breaches in IT security. So TGW, we're a heavy investor in our IT systems and how secure they are. We have independent third parties that come and audit and try and test our systems. And we have partners that we work with that are forever actually looking to secure our systems. And actually, one of the things of our single platform is, if you have a single platform, you've got less access points into a single platform, and therefore it's easier to make it secure. If you are operating on several legacy systems, there's more open access points, and every time there's an open access point, you have potential security problems. It's an evolving area, and certainly an area we take very seriously. And there's been industry examples of where companies have been hacked, and we certainly don't want to be one of those. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, time is about to beat us. It's been terrific having this conversation with you, David, and thank you for talking to me today about this topic, one that always seems to provide an unlimited range of areas to discuss. I'm sure we could talk about this all day and longer. I say it often, but these are truly exciting times for the intralogistics sector, and I think today's conversation with you has perfectly illustrated that. I also want to say thank you to you, the listener, for joining us today for this edition of Logistics Business Conversations. Remember, wherever you get your podcasts from, please subscribe to Logistics Business Conversations to make sure the next edition is delivered straight to you as soon as it's released. Until then, it's goodbye from David.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me, Peter Macleod. Goodbye.